Hey, it's Ben here, and here in this video we're going to have a look at how we create these rotated shape patterns within Adobe Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is jump to our shape tools here, and we're going to click and hold, and we're going to come to the line tool first of all, and we want to make sure that we are on the shape option here, and we're going to just draw out a simple line to somewhere around the middle of our design here, but we can move this around in a minute. So we're going to change the color of our stroke. We'll come to our color picker and we'll just pick a nice blue here and click OK. Doesn't look like much at the moment. We'll increase the width of our line just to make it a little bit thicker. And then with the layer deselected, you can see we've got this nice line that we can select. And actually, sometimes with the lines, you can select them easily, but it's not always easy to drag them. So you may want to turn auto select off, which just means that when we have a layer selected, we don't accidentally jump to a different layer or the background. I'm just going to move this around so it snaps right to the middle on this bottom left corner of this line. So with this shape selected, I'm going to come back to my shape tools. We'll grab the ellipse and I'm just going to draw a circle here. I'm going to hold down shift just to keep that in proportion so we get a perfect circle. I'm going to make the fill for this the same color as that stroke. You can see my recently used colors are listed there. We'll jump back to the move tool and then we're going to drag this onto the end of this line. I'm just going to come down to my layers here. We'll pull this up just so we can see it a bit more clearly. And I'm going to make sure I've got both those layers selected. And then I'm going to use Command and E, which is going to merge those layers together. So now my shapes are connected on the same layer. And you can see as I move them around, it's moving both those shapes together. So essentially to create this pattern, we just need to rotate this once and then we can repeat the rotation but with a duplication. Now when we rotate this at the moment, it's rotating around the midpoint of these combined shapes, but I actually want it to rotate around this bottom left hand corner. Now by default Photoshop doesn't show you the anchor point, so I'm going to jump back to the selection tool. We'll come back to Photoshop and settings and we're going to come to our tools options here and we want to show the reference point when we're using transform. So once we've got that selected here, we're going to click OK, and you can see we now get the reference point for the middle of this image, which is useful for this particular technique. So I'm going to drop this to the bottom left of my image. You can see it's snapping there nicely. And now that means when I rotate this, it's going to rotate around that point. So you can see the angle at the top right where I'm rotating it. So if we think about 360 degrees of the rotation, I'm going to try and find around 10 degrees here, see if we can get it spot on, and I'm going to let go. So we should get 36 of these lollipop shapes rotated around when we do this technique. So once I've rotated that by 10 degrees, I'm going to hit enter to apply the transform. And now when I hold down shift, option or alt, command or control on the PC and tap T, it's going to repeat that rotation around the same point. So if I keep doing this, then we're going to get this nice pattern that repeats beautifully around that center point that we created all the way around, and that's looking pretty nice. So this is all combined into one layer nicely here, which is super handy. You may get multiple layers depending on how you've done your selections. The nice thing about this all being in one layer now is that, for instance, if we take our brush tool and we create a new layer, I'm going to right click here, we'll increase the size of my brush tool nice and big, there we go, and we'll keep it nice and soft. And basically now we can kind of paint over the top of this shape. So I'm painting on a different layer. I'm going to change the color here again. We'll go for a kind of purple or magenta. I'm just going to paint some colors sort of randomly around here. I can use the square brackets on my keyboard to increase the size of the brush again. We'll grab another color here. And we're painting this all on the layer on top above the ellipse. So you can see we're just painting that color in there. Now, if I right click here and go to create clipping mask, you can see now that color is all combined into that shape. Now I'm going to come back to my main tool here and we can zoom in and you can see we've got the shape there. It's still got the outline in the background there as well. If I actually right click on this shape and rasterize the layer, then we'll get that color existing just within that shape. So you can see this color is on a separate layer And we've basically got now this kind of cool shape that we can work with. So if we create a new document here, just show one more example of this, we'll create a custom pixel dimensions. I'm just going to go for 1920 by 1080 and a resolution of 72 pixels per inch. We'll click create. Just going to use Command and 0 to zoom right in, or Control and 0 on the PC. So now we'll draw the same kind of shape. I'm going to grab my line tool. We'll draw this out. Again, we'll increase the width of that. I'm going to change the color to the blue again. And this time we'll grab a triangle. So we'll draw out a triangle. I'm going to hold down Shift so it's a nice triangle shape. And we'll use the same fill as we do for the stroke. So we'll move this here. I'm going to rotate this a little bit so it kind of sits sort of nicely on the end of this shape. Zoom in a little bit, get this nicely orientated. So we'll kind of pop this on the end here and hit enter. And then again, I'm going to select both my layers and use Command or Control and E to combine them into one layer. So if I zoom out, I'm going to move my anchor point again back down to the bottom left, snapping down there. And this time I'm going to rotate it, but I'm also just going to change the size a little bit. Rotate a little bit more and hit enter. So now when I hold down Shift, Alt or Option and Command and do transform, it's actually going to get a little bit smaller with every rotation, which is going to give us this kind of neat looking pattern. So you can see as we keep going round, we're creating this disappearing line with a triangle at the end. Kind of a nice neat pattern there. Okay, so super cool pattern. Again, we'll create another layer above, and I'm going to grab my brush tool again. We'll drop some color on there, switch our colors up, and right click and create a clipping mask, and then we get this nice cool shape again. So I'm going to right click here. We can rasterize this, or we can convert it to a smart object, which is going to keep all that vector shape. Rasterizing it will kind of lose the quality, and this means now that we kind of lose those outlines there and we keep everything within that nice moving shape. So we can obviously treat that now as one shape, move it around, and it's moving around inside that clipping mask as well. So if we turn off the clipping mask, you can see we might want to move this as well, and we can re-add the clipping mask. We can also create a smart object from those two shapes as well, so we can convert multiple shapes into kind of one smart object. So you can see now we can move this around, we can rotate it. It's that combined sharp smart object, so it's a little bit bigger because the paintbrush are included within the area we selected for the smart object. But the nice thing about the smart object is that when we move it around and transform it, we don't lose any quality. We've still got that kind of vector quality of the original image. It looks a bit pixelated there, but that's just because we haven't hit enter. As soon as we do, we get that nice perfectly formed shape that we can rotate and move and work with. So some nice neat tricks for working with these different shapes, for working with the rotation. And obviously you could use a photographic image for this as well, but I just like the shapes. It kind of gives a nice kind of cool design that you can work with. So hopefully these tips are useful for working with these shapes, creating these kind of cool patterns. If you do have any questions, then please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you on the next video.